The name of the well in the Kaaba, Zamzam, is not mentioned in the Quran. The hadiths give us different and contradictory versions of it. Will you enlighten us, please?
It is of the utmost importance that I repeat as many times as necessary the following facts, that either escape the attention of those who study the Quran and hadiths, or are deliberately misinformed or ignored for obvious reasons by the followers of Muhammad. That all the information that we have regarding the traditions of the Arabs of the Jahiliyyah, or period of ignorance before Muhammad, were concocted by Muhammad and by his followers. Each and every one of them cannot be verified by any historically written documents or archaeological finds. Each and every one of them were refined over a period of almost 300 years after the death of Muhammad. Not a single one of them has any basis in the Bible. No followers of Muhammad can ever substantiate or prove any of them based on any recorded evidence prior to the advent of Muhammadan Islam. All these traditions were allegedly transmitted orally, and yet not one of them can be found in the poems or oral traditions of pre-Islamic Arabia. The same followers of Muhammad who attacked the veracity of Muhammad ibn Ishaq's hadith about the biography of Muhammad in his monumental Sirat Rasulullah for the alleged lack of isnad, meaning proofs, cannot show a single isnad regarding all the alleged traditions of the Arabs. What we have at hand are myths, lies, falsified history and genealogy to give Muhammad and his followers a worthy ancestry similar to that of the people of the book. Ladies and gentlemen, a myth becomes dogma by passing through 4 stages. Muhammad creates a myth or a story. Muhammad passes it on to some ignorant, unlearned, illiterate, and superstitious followers as divinely revealed fact. The myth, story, is accepted and repeated with modifications to others. The myth becomes fact, and after centuries is turned into a dogma. To reveal the mendacity of the myth or story, we have to address the issue as follows. We assume that the myth or story is factual. We research the background to find the primary sources and references that mention it. We may or may not find primary or even secondary sources. We investigate other sources that mention the same characters and storyline. We may find serious contradictions between the sources. We then have to evaluate the authenticity and originality of the sources and compare them to the myth story. We make conclusions based entirely upon the evidence. The story of Zamzam is one such concocted myth that even their alleged traditions contradict each other. According to post-Islamic Muhammadan Arab traditions, this was the well that supplied water to Hagar and Ishmael. Arabs believe that the Zamzam well was revealed to Hagar, the wife of Ibrahim, and mother of Ismail, around the year 2000 BC. According to legend, she was desperately seeking water for her infant son, but could find none, as Mecca is located in a hot, dry valley with very few other sources of water. Muhammadan traditions say that Hagar ran 7 times back and forth in the scorching heat between the 2 hills of Safa and Marwa, looking for water. Allah then sent the angel Jibreel. Fiqh Sunnah 5.82, the origin of Zamzam well. Explaining the origin of Zamzam, Ibn Abbas said, when Hagar reached the mountain of Marwa in search of water for her baby son Ismail and herself to quench their thirst, she heard the sound and said to herself, quiet. She again heard the sound, whereupon she said, I have heard you, help me if you can. All of a sudden, she found an angel at the place where now Zamzam is. He either dug it with his heel or touched the ground with his wing, and a spring of water appeared. Hagar encircled the water with soil. She took some water in a container she had, and water kept bubbling up unchecked. Sahih al-Bukhari 3.556 narrated by Ibn Abbas. The Prophet said, may Allah be merciful to the mother of Ismail. If she had left the water of Zamzam as it was, it would have been a flowing stream. The Jurhum, an Arab tribe, came and asked her, may we settle at your dwelling? She said, yes, but you have no right to possess the water. They agreed. This alleged tradition shows that the Jurhum were an Arab tribe before the arrival of the Hebrew Ishmael to the valley of Mecca. Hence, The descendants of Ishmael, from whom came Muhammad, were not original Arabs, but Arabicized, Musta'riba Arabs. It should be noted that one of the most important women in the Muhammadan tradition, the mother of Ishmael, Hagar, is never mentioned by name neither in the Quran nor in many of the hadiths, such as the above, as she is referred to only as the mother of Ishmael. In the Qarawiyun manuscript folio 43 AB, there is a completely different version by Ibn Kathir's Sirah. Then Gabriel came to the Prophet when prayer had been ordained, and he hollowed the place in the wadi, which is the valley, with his heel, so that a spring of running water gushed forth. Gabriel performed his ablution while Muhammad washed him. He washed his face, rinsed his mouth, sniffed water up his nostrils, and wiped his head, and his ears, and his legs as far as the ankles, and sprinkled his pudenda. Then he arose and prayed 2 bowings and prostrated himself 4 times upon his face. Upon the Prophet returns, Allah having refreshed him, and his mind was at rest, for what he yearned for had come to him from Allah. He took Khadija by the hand and brought her to the spring and performed his ablution as Gabriel had done. Then he made 2 bowings and 4 prostrations, both he and Khadija. Thereafter the pair of them used to pray secretly. If this is the true case, then it completely negates the possibility that Zamzam was as old as the days of Ishmael, and the stories are rendered totally incompatible and suspect, especially since Zamzam was allegedly a venerated well in Mecca long before Muhammad. Now let us compare the above with the original and only version in the Bible. Genesis 21:14. And Abraham rose up early in the morning and took bread and a bottle of water and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder and the child, and sent them away. And she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. And the water was spent in the bottle, and she cast the child under one of the shrubs. And she went and sat down opposite him a good way off, as it were a bowshot. For she said, Let me not see the death of the child. And she sat opposite him, and lifted up her voice and wept. And God heard the voice of the lad, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, What ails you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the lad where he is. Arise, lift up the lad, and hold him in your hand, for I will make him a great nation. And God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled the bottle with water, and gave the lad to drink. And God was with the lad, and he grew and lived in the wilderness and became an archer. And he lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took for him a wife from the land of Egypt. In the original biblical story above, there is no mention of Arabia, Allah, Zamzam, or Mecca, since both Hagar and Ishmael remained in the vicinity of Beersheba and Egypt. The well that was revealed by Gabriel was near Beersheba and not Mecca, and had no name, especially not Zamzam. Most important of all, Hagar took him to Egypt and not Arabia. Setting aside the fact that the story as depicted in the Quran and Ahadith contradicts everything that the Bible narrates about Abraham, Ishmael, and Hagar, it is important to point out that in the parched environment of the Arabian Peninsula, all sources of water, especially wells, were venerated. Zamzam was allegedly a holy place among the Arabs of the Jahiliyyah, long before Muhammad and his Quran. Anyway, it was because of Zamzam being a source of water that an enclosure surrounding it was built to protect it, and then the Kaaba became a holy place venerated by the pagan Arabs. The allegations made by Arab historians and theologians that Zamzam was holy to the pagan Arabs because they had already known about Hagar and Ishmael are totally false and unsubstantiated. There is not to be found a shred of written or oral tradition anywhere in Arabian history or literature to support such a preposterous statement. Moreover, from both the logical and practical points of view, the well of Zamzam, which is in the vicinity of Mecca, is almost 1,000 miles away from Beersheba, and neither Hagar and Ishmael nor even a camel could have survived this distance on one bottle of water. In fact, as a matter of logic and historicity, one should ask, if they were so important and holy, why then does the Quran never mention the names of either Zamzam or Hagar implicitly or explicitly? It was an extremely practical and clever policy by the Muhammadan theologians to associate many Arab pagan traditions with the biblical stories of Abraham, Ishmael and others, and in this manner perpetuating the myth that the Jahiliyyah traditions were cognizant of previous revelations, contrary to what the Quran itself asserts as otherwise, through the process of Islamizing them. The alleged tradition of the pagan Arabs contradicts in every step the details as given in the original version of the story in the Bible. Ishmael was over 14 years old when Abraham sent him and his mother away from Beersheba. He definitely was not a baby. In conclusion, it is not difficult to separate fact from fiction, since any reader has the original story in the Bible, which was revealed to Moses 2,200 years before Muhammad, and the myths and legends created by himself and his followers to pervert, contort and twist history, facts, religion and veracity.